Hello, so I'm going to continue working on my example project 3 today. Let's jump into it, just stirring my coffee. So, when I left off last time, I was at step 4, where instead of the Earth, I'm adding the moon. So I had just placed the moon. I was working a little bit off camera, and I just brought in my Earth image and have that placed very similar to this. Um, Now I'm all about accuracy in this, even though I have no, like, the moon rotates so that one face of it is always facing the Earth. I know that. This is probably the wrong side. This is probably the side of the moon that faces the Earth. So, like, the moon is backwards in my image, but if I'm looking at just lighting to try to get this right, obviously the sun is lighting the Earth in this manner, and this part is in shade. So, um, in all honesty, the same should be happening to the moon. And just so you know, um, like I did that to the Earth. I did that shadow on there by using a layer mask, and so you can see that you can still partially see this side of the Earth. That's because I didn't use full black on my layer mask. I used a partial gray, and so that partially hides the pixels. And so in that way we can kind of simulate the shadow on that side of the Earth. So now I need to do the same to the moon. Um, so I'm working in my layer mask, and I need to make my brush a bit bigger. And I'm going to kind of approximate the see, I don't know why my brush, like, even though my brush is huge, it's not painting inside of the brush. What are my settings here? Okay, so I'm just trying to see what my brush settings were that's making it do that. I don't know what it is, but okay, so I'm going to put this all in shadow, and then I will use my white to partially reveal this. I'm trying to get about the same angle that I have going on with the Earth shadow, just so that it's kind of similar. Obviously, they're both in the same region of the solar system, so they're going to receive the same um, quality of light from the sun. And so there we go. I think that works. Okay, so I've got my so they messed this up. If this part of the moon is in sunlight and this part has shade, they should have done the same thing with the Earth here. But we'll forgive them for that. Not everybody is as nerdy about space as me. So, okay, so I've got my moon with its shadow placed, and then the next step after this is so they're adding asteroids into their background here. I'm not going to add asteroids. What I'm going to add is I've already gone out and found this image. I have this image of a steel ball. And the reason I'm using this is in my book, the moon is like basically a crop growing planet, not planet, but a crop growing colony. And they like they use water to grow crops inside of like these caves, and it's all like hydroponic specialty growing, and they can grow a lot more than normal Earth. Also, something, this was written in the 60s, so their science isn't entirely accurate, but it also has something to do with being lower gravity. They were able to grow more dense crops and help to feed the earth. So the way they ship these crops, what they do is they grow grain and ship it back to earth. And the way they ship it is they have a catapult. And the catapult, they load steel containers full of grain, and they catapult it basically into the ocean where it's picked up on Earth. And so these are obviously like supposed to be huge steel balls kind of that they're catapulting. And so I'm going to, instead of doing asteroids, I'm going to do steel catapult balls um, for my objects that are in space. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of the white around this ball. So what I need to do is I'm going to turn on my rulers by pressing Command R, and I'm going to just drag some guys. So this should be a fairly perfect circle. It's a machined brushed metal kind of shape. Okay, so I'm going to draw, I'm drawing guides here so that I can make a selection, a good selection around the circle. And then I'm going to choose my elliptical marquee tool. And the way making these circles works is if you have guides in these corners, you can press here, hold shift, and drag down to the opposite corner. It should be the perfect size of your object, which it's pretty darn near close. And then what I can do is just Command Shift I to invert my selection, delete the white stuff around, and then I've got my nice steel ball. One thing I do notice is that I left a little bit of white at the bottom, so I'm just going to reselect it, shift the selection a little bit to get rid of the white on the bottom. Okay, I've got this nice steel ball. I don't know if the lighting is going to be perfectly good with this thing, but maybe I should adjust that a little bit. So if I do right, it's up in space, so it's probably not getting as much light as what is being shown here. We'll adjust this a little bit, and since it's up in the same sky that my other objects are in, I'm going to give this a very similar mask. Mask it all out, and then let it be visible, kind of there, right? Okay. And do I want to rotate this thing at all? Let's see. Oh wait, I'm going to turn off my connection there so that if I rotate it, so what I did was I unlinked my mask from my object so the mask would stay in place even though I was rotating my object. Okay, and then maybe make this a little bit smaller, and they would have like multiple, clear my guides, view, clear guides, they would have multiple of these like lined up on the way to Earth, so I'll have a few of these happening here, maybe on a little trajectory towards Earth. Get the point across that they're actually traveling through space in that direction. Okay. And maybe this foreground. So I'm gonna put these all in a group and call these projectiles. Okay. Call this 1, call this 2, call this 3. And this one maybe it's a little bit larger. And maybe it's happening, these should all probably be behind the text as well. So I have my text group here. Put these behind the text. I don't know, would it be cool for one to be in front of the text? Nah, I'm not going to do that. I'll keep it behind. Okay, and then maybe my other two are just to try to keep these from looking too similar. I'm just going to rotate them a little bit. Okay, so they supposedly have like a 20-kilometer long magnet projectile system to like catapult these things into space. Since the moon doesn't have very high gravity, they can do a catapult, and then they you know, put them on a course to land in the ocean at Earth. So okay, so I've got my projectiles up here in space. Now I'll continue on here. So now it's saying adding the asteroids. We've got that. That's my projectiles, which I'm using instead of asteroids. Then it says to organize our layers and create some stars. Now that we have our layout set up, we're going to go ahead and make some stars. So I've already got my stuff like in pretty good organization. I can call this layer moon, and actually no, I need my Earth separate. It's got a separate mask than this, so I'll keep that in a separate layer. But my layers are fairly organized. I've been keeping them organized. So I've got my text, my Earth, my projectiles, my moon. Okay, so now we start working on stars. Create a new layer and place it just above the background layer in the layers panel. Fill the stars layer with black by going to select all, select the entire canvas, and edit fill. Okay, and fill dialog window appears, choose black as the option. Okay, so basically it's doing just like what this is doing, which is filling the layer with black. So what I'll do is just duplicate that and just rasterize that. So now I've got a layer filled with black. This is going to be my stars layer. Okay. And then it says go to filter, noise, add noise. Okay, filter, noise, add noise. Okay. And then it's telling me to change the amount to about 25%, which may or may not work for my image. So let's see. Let's turn on monochromatic, which I do have. Although stars do have varying colors, but we've got that. Okay, so then it says to change it to screen. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a smart object, and then I can adjust my, and I should be able to adjust my noise later. Filter, noise, add noise. Bump it up some. Okay, so one thing that happens is I have some masks going on here, so these stars are showing through on my on some of my stuff here, so I need to put a mask, a little bit of a mask in here to hide that. Okay, this is where you have to kind of adjust based on your specific how you're customizing your project, because this is, you know, I did something a little bit different than they did, and so I need to adjust to make it work for me, which I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to mask out this where the stars were appearing on top of my planet and on top of my objects, because obviously these objects are opaque and we can't see through them to see the stars in the background. Okay, same thing goes with my Earth. Now I also noticed that since my Earth had a black background in that image, I've kind of got that black square happening. So what I want to do is also mask out that square. But I need to do that in my Earth image, so oh, was I painting on my image? I think I did. That's okay. Okay, so I need to find my Earth image, and again, I'm not even going to mask. I'm just going to delete that black background from it. By making another selection like this. Command Shift I, delete. There we go. Now that black area is gone from the back of that. Okay. So now I've got some stars, although I don't know if these look great. Okay, so it's to change the stars to screen. Okay, I've got that. This probably looks kind of weird and unnatural with the Earth, Moon, and asteroids having black borders around them, but we'll fix all that later. Okay. Reduce the prominence of stars. Now it says to zoom in to 100%. So you can get 100% by clicking on the hand and just do 100%. And then open up the Levels Image Adjustment dialog. Okay. So Image, Adjustments, Levels. Adjust the input levels to get rid of a lot of stars, leaving only a few behind. Okay. So I can kind of land the stars layer, yeah. There we go. So I can kind of slide these around a little bit to change how this looks. thing is, when I zoom out, I almost don't see anything, but let's see. Well, that helps. So if I bump them up really bright and then really increase my contrast, I feel like that helps. I don't know, I feel like I can't, like when I zoom out even a little bit, so I'm at 50% zoom, I can't even see the stars. I want to be able to see them at this level, right? So bump this up a little bit. But here we see way too many. You know what? I'm not even gonna do this way. I'm just going to I'm gonna import an image of stars. It's probably a lot easier than what I'm doing right now. In fact, I'm gonna use an image of the Milky Way. All right. Make sure I have a reasonably large image of the Milky Way. Okay, I've got the Milky Way here. I will just bring that guy in and resize it to work with my image. I want it to be, I have no idea which direction this would normally be oriented, but I want it to be recognizable as the Milky Way here, so obviously I don't need anything behind the moon. Okay, so there I've got a Milky Way. Now I've got the same problem as before, but what I can do is just copy this mask to my selection, and then with that selected, click my mask icon, and it should give me a mask of the same shape. Okay, there we go. We'll get rid of that. This is my Milky Way. Okay, put a copy of this in my originals without the mask. Oops. Okay, there we go. Maybe I'll clean up my mask a little bit here. Okay. One thing is my projectiles feel a little bit too bright, so I'm going to add, let's see, if I add some black and then make this clipping mask. Okay, yeah, so I made it a clipping mask, so it's only applying the black to the objects in this group. And then I'm just going to change the blending mode here to something and reduce the opacity. I just want to like brighten these things, take the brightness off of those things just a little bit. Okay, maybe hard night light is not the right blending mode though. Okay. And maybe just a little bit of masking to reveal a little bit of brightness on the side. Okay, that moves them down just a little bit. I think that helps. Okay, so I've got my moon, I've got my little projectiles. Maybe these are oh, they're good. I'll just leave them. I'll just leave them like that. Got my moon, my projectiles, and then let me see what my next step is on my thing here. I've got my background stars. I didn't do the stars the way they said to do them, but that's fine. Let's see, what should the blending mode be for my... I guess normal works. Okay. So after we have the stars, it says to fade out the Earth. Oh, so it's got a fade going on the bottom of the Earth, but I've kind of already done that because like the moon is the main object here. I've already put my shadow in on the backside because I wanted it to be more accurate to the lighting from the sun. So if the sun is hitting my Earth in this direction, then it's going to be hitting the moon in the same direction. So I'm going to keep mine faded where it's at. But what I can do is add a little bit of a vignette to my image. The vignette kind of replicates what photography does. I'm going to change this to multiply. I'm going to get a black brush. So old cameras used to have this kind of thing where the edges would be darker because not as much light would be hitting the edges of the film. So we can replicate that by just adding a vignette here manually. So I'm adding kind of darkness to the corners and then keeping this, I think, multiply blending mode. Yeah. Multiply and then reducing the opacity of the vignette a little bit. Okay. We've got that. And so I'm going to skip this step. Add a moon glow. So they did that. Use the same brush settings to paint a glow on the moon, except this time make it a bit smaller in the middle of the previous shine. Okay. So what did they do to make the glow? Okay, so they painted a white stroke on the moon. I think what I'm going to look at is my moon has some levels adjustment going on here. Let's see what. I'll brighten it up just a little bit. I need to be able to see my text as the thing. So that's my consideration with how bright I'm making this. I think that's good. Okay, now it says, now I'm getting to more of the text editing. Add some text styles. So we're going to make some new styles to the text to make it stand out. Go to Layer, Layer Style, Bevel, and Emboss. Okay, to give it a little bit of an edge. So I will do that. So in my text layer, and I'm only going to be doing this to my main lettering, not my secondary lettering, okay? Because that's the primary message here. It should be what's getting the most attention. So that's where my focus is going to be with these text effects. Okay, so it says Layer Style, Bevel, and Emboss. So if I go here, Bevel and Emboss, it's saying size of 1. A little bit of an edge. So it says size of 1. It's got the angle at 120 degrees, altitude of 30, screen and multiply, and the softening is 0. And it says inner bevel smooth. Okay, so it's just got a tiny bit of an edge for legibility, I guess. What is their depth setting? Oh, I see. It's got a size of 0, not 1, and a depth of 1%. Is that right? I gotta figure out if I want it up or down. I'm gonna go with down. That's the direction the light is coming from in the other areas of the image, so I'm just gonna go with down. Okay, and then I'm gonna do, I think I'll do a small amount of that to my other text just to make it more legible. So I go back to Bevel and Emboss. Notice how it gives just a very, very slight shade to the bottom edge of the images when I choose up. And it just makes it just a tiny bit more legible. And this is only done for legibility. It's not for a style or anything like that. Just to increase the legibility of my text. Okay, so I've got that. Now what's it say to do? I've got a layer style gradient overlay. So I'm going to go to gradient overlay to give the center of the text a sort of glow, since this is where the light will be coming from. Okay, so we've got a blending mode of screen. Let me make this a little smaller. Opacity of 72%. Radial style. Angle 90 and scale 150. This is their settings. They have reverse turned on also. And they, like, see how my gradient is all white? I need a white to black gradient, which is, okay, that gets me a little closer to what they have. They do have a white to black gradient there too. Okay. I think my settings are there. Sorry if you're hearing my gulps. And I'm going to get rid of my guides. Okay, so gradient overlay is kind of in the middle there. It's brightening it up a bit. And then next it says fade out the asteroids. Here's the blend mode of the asteroids to screen. We'll make all of our darker colors disappear, leaving in lighter colors. Oh, I see. So it's like they're change this to screen. Okay, it's not really changing the quality of my projectiles. One thing I could do is this. This could have a little bit darker shadow behind it. Just this one. My other ones are good. Okay. There we go. Okay, and then it's adding highlights to the projectiles. So that's what it says, give the asteroids a glow. So I'll call this highlights. It says we're going to add a light shine. Start by creating a new layer. Use the brush tool with a white brush to paint the bottom side of the asteroids. Change the blending mode to overlay. Okay, so I will get a white brush and give a highlight along here, very small one along here, and then change this to overlay. Overlay. Oh, I see. Could probably make this a, yeah, clipping mask. And then This one looks a little weird. Probably reduce this a little bit. This one has so much detail in it that I'm not sure this is going to work out great, but okay, that's good. Let's see, should we do that with the Earth? Let's look. Let's look. So I'll do a layer here with a white brush along the edge of the Earth. Change it to overlay. I'm going to make this a clipping mask, and then I'm going to blur it a little bit. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Okay. Call that Earth Glow, and then I've got this is Projectile Glow, and then these things can be put into groups together. Just name them the same again. Projectiles, so we'll call this the Earth group. I have a vignette. Okay, so we've got that happening. I'm gonna just mess with this glow layer a little bit again here. I want to see something, so I'm gonna go back to. Oh, that's not good. So let me just delete these pixels. What I want to do is get a very soft brush. Instead of having the glow go around the edge, I'm going to just put it like, whoops, closer to the middle. Yeah, I don't think it's changing the quality of the picture very much either way, so I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so the asteroid's aglow. Now we're cropping the Earth. We're smoothing the edges and removing the black border. I already did that. Okay, now it says give the Earth a glow. Let's make our Earth graphic, which in my image is the moon graphic, right? Let's make our, let's see. I want to see what my moon looks like slightly bigger here. I like it better like that or like that. I think the larger one is a little bit better. Makes it look a little more menacing. So, got that. Now I've got to kind of fix my Milky Way. mask. Oops. Okay, so now it's saying give the Earth a glow. Let's make our Earth graphic more interesting by adding a glow or shine. We're going to add a glow to the top center part of the Earth. Create a new layer by pressing Control Command Shift N. Okay, so I am working with my moon. So I'm going to Command Shift N to make a new layer. I'm just going to do this new layer right here. Okay. And then my text placement may or may not be okay, but use a wide brush with white as your foreground color and click once at the top of the Earth. Okay, so this is saying to kind of brighten up here, but I'm going to do it more on this side where it's lighter. So let me get a brush. This is a wide brush. Use a 125 pixel wide brush. So I'll just pick a size that works for mine. Right there. Okay, so I've got a bright spot happening in this layer. Would it look better if it were here? We'll see. I'll just put it in. We'll see. We can move it later. Okay, so I've got my bright spot here. Oops. Switch the blend mode of the layer to soft light. Okay. Soft light. Okay. Okay, so that's not like, whatever that bright spot was, it's not doing a whole lot for my image, so I'm just going to add that over. I'm just going to move it over. continue on to further enhance our Earth graphic. We'll add a light glow around its edges. Okay. So I'm going to click on my moon layer. Actually, I'm going to zoom out a bit and make a selection about the size of my moon. Let's see, that's the top of my moon. Wish I could see outside of my workspace sometimes. Let's give this a try. Oh, I'm actually changing the size of the layer. I want to change the size of my selection. I guess I can't do it after the fact. That was a little bit wide. That's a little bit wide still. I'll get there with enough trial and error. Still wide. There we go. That's about right. So this is a selection I'm going to say. This is like the outside edge of my moon. So I'm going to go to select, save selection, and just call this moon. That's my moon selection. Okay, so I've got my selection. Then it says next create a new layer and fill the selection on this new layer with a blue color. Okay. So what this is actually doing, now that I see this, is it's adding almost like a atmosphere effect, which the moon doesn't have an atmosphere. So now that I see what it's doing, I'm just going to skip this. Just the color saturation of the moon, maybe. I'll skip that because there's not a lot of color in the moon. Brighten up the text curves. Okay, so I'm back to the text now. So on my text, brighten up the text with a curves adjustment. So I'm going to add, it says to do an adjustment to the actual image, but I'm just going to add a curves adjustment layer, and give it a little bit of an S-curve here. So it kind of gives a little bit of contrast and adjustment to my letters. Let's see. I click this little button here, which makes it apply only. It's like making it a clipping mask. It applies only to the letters. Okay, so that's a pretty strong adjustment, but I can always just reduce the opacity a little bit for what this is doing. And that curves brightens up my textures text, and it kind of brightens it in the middle where I have the had the gradient overlay happening, and darkens the edges, which is fine with me. I think that's a good look. Next, add a blur effect to the text. So let's give our text some sort of motion blur to further enhance the type treatment. Click on the text layer and go to Select, Load Selection. Select. Go to Select, Load Selection to make a selection on our tag. How about I just go to Select Pixels? There we go. Okay. Now click on the text texture layer in the Layers panel to activate it. And then duplicate the selection on a new layer by pressing Command J. Now click on the text texture layer in the Layers panel. Oh, here. Okay. To activate it, and then duplicate the selection into a new layer. So I'm going to duplicate that. So now I've got my texture selected and added to a new layer. And I'm going to call this layer, looks like motion blur. Okay. Apply a radial filter to the duplicated layer by going to Filter, Blur, Radial Blur. Set the amount to 50 and pick Zoom for the blur method. Okay, so I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Radial Blur. Set the amount to 50 and then pick Zoom for the blur method. Okay. A little bit of a motion blur going on. And then it says to add a lens flare somewhere. Let me see, how much of this blur do I want to keep? Let's look at... Slightly reduced opacity there. Okay. Add a lens flare somewhere around the middle of our space. Word, which for me is uprising, to help draw the eyes of the viewer to it more. Now I'm at right about an hour, so after I do this lens flare step, I will probably pause and come back to this on Thursday. Okay, create a new layer, fill it with black. So when you're adding lens flare, you need some kind of pixels in there. So I've got a black layer here. Oh, it says first put some guides where the lens flare is going to be to make it easier to apply the filter. Drag out a horizontal and vertical guide. Okay. So they have their lens flare happening like in the middle of the letters. I'll have mine maybe happening over to the right a little bit. Okay, so I've got guides. Okay, then create a new layer, fill it with black. Got that. And then apply the lens flare filter on the new layer filled with black by choosing filter render lens flare. Okay, so filter render lens flare. I don't ooh, the movie prime lens flare. I don't see how I'm lining this up to the guides. I don't see that happening, but whatever, I can just move it after the fact, I guess. Do I like that lens flare? I don't know if I like those lines happening. I will I'll try a different lens flare here. Filter, render, lens flare. Let's try this one. And it says change the blend mode to lighten in the layers panel. Lighten. I think I like screen better. Okay, and then I can reduce the opacity of this a little bit. Maybe even, what happens if this is behind the text? That looks weird. Okay, so we've got some lens flare. And then it says to have more stars. So it's getting into some further steps that I'm going to wait to do until next video. So I've got my lens flare happening. Maybe I might do a little bit of a levels adjustment on top of this. Okay. So that's it for today. Made some progress. I got my background fully in. Have some more effects happening to the text, and I've got some projectiles coming from my moon for delivery to Earth. And yeah, we'll leave it at that for now. So have a good week.